Welcome to Inspired by Design, the podcast where we explore the tools, stories, and insights to help you rediscover your authentic self and navigate life with less resistance. I'm Katie Rupert, a former hustle and grind overachiever on a thrilling and messy journey. I'd love to share what I'm learning and help others in self-discovery using human design. So, if you're seeking a way to move forward, let me be your weekly mindset coach and share stories to inspire you to action towards your unique purpose without the force or burnout. I am excited to introduce you to Carol Baker today. I met Carol through the Chakra Healing Room, and she is a very fun person to know and listen to. She's got a lot of wisdom and stories. I wanted Carol to come and share it with all of you because it fits right along with this journey to following who you're meant to be, or uncovering, remembering what it is that I'm here for, and following purpose, really. For me, that's been a journey of deconstruction of faith and then reconstructing, like, what do I believe and where am I going and what is the spiritual journey all about? And along the way, still looking to thrive as I'm learning, as I'm growing. Carol has climbed the corporate ladder all the way to the top over 30 years. And ultimately decided to trust her gut, her intuition, and walk away from vacation and a steady paycheck and all of the tests saying, hey, this is the right job for you. But there was something inside of her that said, I have a little more for you. And sometimes things complete, whether they make sense or not, we got to follow them. And Carol's an emotional generator. She's got a 4-1 profile, and all that you need to know about that is that she's really meant to follow her gut and do things that light her up. And when she follows her own path, owns it, then it inspires everyone else. And I see that's true. She does feng shui and tarot reading. She actually created her own tarot deck reading, and it's just a really, really cool take on it. And she gets these amazing downloads. I love hearing her talk about her intuitive messages. She does numerology and has a spin on that too. I just recently got a reading with her vibology process, and she's a writer. Oh my gosh, there's just so much that Carol does, and I'll let her take it from here. Carol, thank you for being willing to share your story with us. So glad you're here.
Oh, well, first of all, thank you for having me and the wonderful introduction. And I'm happy to share my story. There's a lot of people out there that have gone through or are going through something similar.
Yeah, absolutely. I know it's so relatable. I was just listening and like, wow, what perspective you have looking back on it. So I can't wait for everyone to hear that. But let's just start at the beginning. Can you take us back to corporate life, and what were some of those first subtle signs that you were like, is something waking up in me? Am I going to have to change? And what that felt like?
Yeah. So I was 30 years in the corporate world, 25 with the same company. Like I said, I worked my way up from intro all the way to the top. So by the time I had left the company, I was senior vice president of marketing, and I had responsibility over marketing for 3 businesses, 1 in Europe and 2 in North America, and in the same industries, different market segments. And so through my entire career, I kind of just went with the flow. I didn't really knew I was doing what I'm supposed to be doing at that point, and I kind of just always went by my gut. And even through the most stressful periods of my career, which involved having to tell people that are laid off, media crisis, things that would happen with customers, big altering things, those didn't stress me out as much as when I was in the last couple of years of my career. And I felt like I was sitting around not doing anything that spoke to me. And part of it was it's just business, right? We get bought by a operational company out of Europe. Their goal is to transform us and sell us in 5 years. When I'm talking about transformation, they're talking about operational efficiencies. That's typically what happens. You get the business to get it operating as efficiently as it can. So you're going to be focused on things like processes and manufacturing efficiencies in the world that I was in. And so I was head of marketing, so it's really hard to do marketing when you really don't know what your strategy is going to be yet, especially when you know you're going to be sold in 5 years, and whoever buys you, they're going to change that strategy. So I found myself trying to use my strategic skills, my problem solving skills, and always met with, but they were always met with resistance. And that was simply because of how we were structured and what, under the new structure, I was working across these various businesses who now had their own teams in place, whereas before it was one big team, and this was my area of responsibility. So I'm dealing with people who are also trying to dig in and make a path for themselves in their area at the same time. So my role was really became more of a support. Come see me when you need something. That's not who I am. And that really, really bothered me. I really didn't understand why it bothered me so much. And so I became completely stressed out by this. It showed, I started to have physical symptoms. Inside, I was just like, this is just not me. I can tell when I'm in the flow and going with it. And then this was just not flowing for me. Something was wrong. I mean, I would go to a conference, for example, a leadership goal setting seminar with the team. And I love learning. My background in marketing, part of it is digging into consumer behavior or customer behavior, solving problems and using the research. I love that area. So when we would have these, I would love them. But I found myself like, I couldn't think. I couldn't get on board with whatever was being said. It's like it would not stick to me. And I was like, what the hell's going on with me? Why is this not resonating? I just couldn't put my finger on it. Then I started having symptoms like anxiety, heart palpitations. I got frozen shoulder. I couldn't like get a cup out of the cupboard one day and I didn't know why. And I would say when I was younger, all those signs I could have easily walked away from a job. But as you grow older, you have more responsibilities, you get more bills. There's all these things that keep you back from wanting to make decisions in your life, right? And for me, I'm 6 minutes away from my office. I have a 6-figure salary with a huge potential bonus. I think I was like 10 weeks of vacation by then. You know, everything on paper that sounds like you should want, it just doesn't make you happy. Just to prove to the point that those things in life don't make you happy. It was my husband who said, you need to walk away. He's like, we'll be fine, just walk away. And so in my mind, I've got this envision, if I'm not productive and not doing something, I'm envisioning myself that I'm going to be like some bag lady pushing a shopping cart under a bridge, right? So I had to get this vision out of my head and start focusing, hey, if I leave, what can I do? You know, like I have more time, what could I do? And so at that point in time, I decided I don't want to go back in the corporate world because I felt like it would be the same song and dance, maybe a different storyline, dealing with the same people. Because I was around corporate people in my job, but also outside of my job. And we'd all have these same stories to share, right? And so there was nothing in me that wanted to go back to that any longer. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I went to school for journalism. I'm a writer at heart. I will write. I'll try writing. But I also, over the years, I had some hobbies. One was feng shui. I started being a traditional feng shui practitioner. It's been almost 25 years now. I had done it during a time where my job got a little boring and I'm like, I need a hobby or something to keep me in. And I was always interested in energy, things like that. So I learned traditional feng shui. So just so you know me, Katie, I learned the Western version that was mostly taught in America. And I'm like, I'm a researcher at heart. I got to find out more. So I need to know everything, how everything works, because kind of what I do in my job in order to feel comfortable and understand that I can relate to it and I can make someone else relate to it. So I thought, okay, this is what I'm going to do. So I go out of this world, surprise, surprise. The first thing I learned was how much my ego was attached to that job, that role that I played for all those years. We spend 10 hours a day, 50 plus hours a week, even getting texts all the week and all that in that role. You forget who are you? Who am I? I don't even know who I am without that title or that role or responsibilities or those people. I know I'm a mom, but my kids are grown now, right? So I felt like I was excited at first to leave and get out and that pressure be gone of the everyday problems and starting to feel unstuck. But at the same time, I began to feel stuck because I didn't know who I was or what was going on at the time. I just knew that I was meant to go do something else. I decided that 2 things I walk away from that I loved about my job, and that was research and writing. So I'm going to start with writing a book. I need to get back into the habit of writing. I wrote my entire career, but it was always business related or technical, or it was creative copywriting or script or a speech or whatever. Not anything that is the length of a book. So I really tried to sit down and write and force it, and it just wouldn't come out. I found myself writing about work-related things, and I'm like, why am I writing about this? I don't want to write about this. And I think it was more of a therapeutic writing for me. Because I would get to the point where I'm like, and why am I saying this? I would spend all this time writing about it. Then I would just stop like, why do I care about this anymore? So I decided, I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to put this down. I'm not even going to try to figure it out anymore. I spent 1.5 years spinning my wheels on what I wanted to do. And at the same time, I was still doing some business consulting, right? People would reach out to me for help and stuff. And so I was still a little bit tapped into the business world and marketing and research on the industry side for that. But that's not really where I wanted to grow. I was in this crossover mode. And when I decided that I was not going to write a book, or at least I was going to put the idea down, I just went into play mode. And I grabbed a book. This was an old book. I saw it on TV, and it was like a treasure hunt. Right after I started reading this, COVID happened. It was great because it got my husband and I outdoors. And he's still working in that, but at the time he was working from home. And so he's stuck in this house all day too, right? Besides me, I'm living here, stuck at house. But now we got COVID and everybody's working from home, right? We started going out on the weekends and all that. And I started researching, following this treasure hunt. And I came across a story that was very interesting about an art theft that had happened in St. Louis. It's a Picasso that got stolen in 1973. I'd never heard of this art theft. But as I started doing some digging, I found about these other art thefts. And so this ended up starting to be my first writing journey. So my first book that I wrote was a nonfiction crime story, true story about a piece of art that was stolen from the St. Louis Art Museum. And I had only got there because I finally just let go of the idea, right? So this was something I have learned in my journey that I have to work with, is how I work. A lot of these things, I wouldn't have known that from like Myers-Briggs. I wouldn't have known that from Clifton and all that. They were good at showing me what I was good at, like the job, but they weren't good at showing me how I work individually, how I use my energy, right? Yeah. They'll show you how you work with other teams, how you communicate, but that's it. I never thought this book would lead me to where I am now, but it did.
Before we jump into that, I do want to just pull out a few things from what you said that really caught my attention. So one of the things you were describing as you started noticing symptoms, anxiety popping up, the frozen shoulder, I started thinking about so many people that are in the corporate world that maybe they are today and they're not sure why this episode found them, but sometimes it's just important to note that our bodies do try to communicate with us. And if we're not listening, it does end up stronger and more dramatic until one of 2 things happens. Either we like snap out of it, or we just stick in it and then we think it's something about us. I did something wrong. And really all it is when our body is talking to us, ailment, mental, whatever it is, it's usually just, it's trying to support us. It's trying to say, hey, listen, we're missing some signs. And if we aren't tuned in. So it's just a reminder to people, like, what's going on in your body? Can you be curious about it instead of acting like something went wrong?
And then the other thing you mentioned that I think is important, because I'm all about community and tribe, and sometimes we never do get there where we're listening, and maybe we just think, oh, this is just the thing life handed me. But you mentioned your husband calling out like, hey, just quit, we'll figure it out. And I love that moment. I've had some of those in my own life where I wasn't getting it, and so our tribe can call it out in us. So just a gentle reminder that if you don't have community, if you haven't talked to your person about what you're struggling internally with, that would be, here's your sign, right? Do that. And there are a couple other things you mentioned that reminded me of human design, of course. So when you were making the decision to leave and you knew your gut was like, I got to get out of here, I'm feeling resistance, you knew. And because, so you're an emotional authority. And I think it's really cool that without you knowing anything about human design, you were able to really take a good hard look. I don't think it's wrong. Like on paper, this is this and this is that. And so many of us make our decisions based on, hey, we've got the 10-week vacation, I should just be grateful. This might be with jobs or maybe even relationships, right? We might be able to make it make sense and really use our skills and our mind and our perspective, and even get wise counsel from other people. But at the end of the day, if our bodies don't feel satisfied with that decision, especially as a generator, it doesn't matter, because the happiness and when you have a tribe that can call it out for you, like your husband did, like, listen, I just want you to know that I could care less about your 10 weeks of vacation if you're not going to be happy. I want to see you thrive. We need people like this, and we have people like this. So if you don't feel like you have people and you're listening, get plugged in. There are plenty of communities. Start by asking in our Facebook group, the Inspired by Design with Katie Rupert. Be like, hey, you said something about tribe and I need some help, and we'll get you some resources. And then finally, the crisis of who am I? What am I even doing this for? Where am I? Everyone relates to that at some point. And I remembered I had this thought. I studied Richard Rohr for a while. I loved his books, and he talks about the dark night of the soul. And a lot of times people feel like that needs to be some, like, I'm sitting naked on the floor all alone or something moment, but it doesn't. That thing inside you that's like, there's something more out there, there's something more, like that can be your dark night of the soul. And sometimes it's just walking away and you're like, what was I waiting for? But it is valuable to go through all that.
Yeah.
On the other side. So yeah, pick up the story, whatever. Let's start talking a little bit about navigating to this. You're in a spiritual realm now. You said you were interested in energy and.
Yeah. So I'll tell you, so true story, my frozen shoulder and all that went away after I left my job.
Isn't that cool?
I'll tell you how that physical feeling you get. And my husband was in the mental health field. He actually worked with and trained people who worked with adults who have disabilities. So he had a lot of information. And when he looked at me, he's like, I feel like you're suffering from burnout. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, well, how can I be burned out? It's not like I'm doing a lot. And burnout doesn't necessarily mean that you're doing a lot. It just, there's just so much resistance in who I was and what that particular role required of me, which was a conflict. So even when I left my job, I told my boss, I said, look, I don't think you need my role anymore. I said, because you're asking, I'm this kind of person and this is what you need. You have that in my staff. You don't really need me. And he thanked me and says, thank you for being honest. Mm-hmm. That's how I ended up walking away. So in my journey and writing my first book, I was so excited to, first of all, remind myself that I still have these skills. I still can do this and find excitement in work, right? That was very important for me, because in between me leaving my job and putting out that book, 5 years had passed. 18 months I was working on the book and all that. It just took me so long to get out of that funk once I left work, trying to figure out who I was, and that how I ended up going back really towards what has always interested me, energy, spiritual stories, and that. I always remembered all these things I could not explain during the course of my life. Weird things, weird dreams and all that. I'm a kind of person, I dream every night, I remember my dreams, and I know when I'm lucid dreaming, and I know when a dream is completely different and real. Like I would have dreams of people who had passed who would visit me, and then I found out the next day they passed. But this didn't happen a lot, it just happened occasionally, and those things made me interested because I'm a curious person and I want to know what is going on, why did these things happen. So over the years I collected stories like this in my own mind and just kind of set them aside because I didn't know what to do with them. I was raised Catholic. That's not something you learn about being raised Catholic. So I had to approach it and try to remove the fear from it. And for me, removing fear is really doing your research and reading non-biased materials to kind of understand what's going on. So that was a big thing for me. After I published my book, a big synchronicity happened. So here's, I'm just gonna show you, just for show and tell. So this is the first book I published. And the day my book launched was on World Art Day. And we did a little book signing and launch party at Picasso's Coffee House in St. Charles. And so I had enlisted a friend of mine who just retired from her job. We had worked together at the same company, and she was an event planner. So her and I had worked together for many years, and we worked well in event. And I'm like, I know that she'll be great to work with me on this. So we worked the event, and that day she goes down with her husband to see his childhood friends for a dinner. And the next morning I have these text messages says, call me the first thing you wake up. And I'm like, wow, what's going on? So I call her and she said, you're not gonna believe this. She said, so last night at dinner, we're in the basement, tornado warnings were going off. She goes, we end up in the basement, we're all down there. She goes, and I was talking to a couple of the wives. She goes, and out of my ear, I hear one of the other gentlemen there telling a story about how that day, a guy told him that when he was a teenager, his father, uncle, and his uncle's friend had stolen a Picasso. And she was like, my head almost flipped off. And I was like, okay, well, did you post it on Facebook? She's like, no. She goes, we're not even friends on Facebook. She goes, these are his friends. And she goes, we were blown away. And all that. So I was like, I could not believe it. I'm like, what no one has solved this crime for 50 years. And I just launched a book about it, and some random guy, tells some other body randomly who doesn't even know that, they don't know there's this connection there. I mean, it was just, we were freaked out about it. We were like, how? And I was like, if that is not a symbol or sign, nothing is.
I love those synchronicities.
And
you just can't deny them. Like, oh my goodness.
No. And the other weird thing was when I started writing the book, I wasn't sure. I had collected all these little stories that kind of tied together, but I was like, am I going to write a series of short stories? But then I broke my foot. I've played sports my entire life and never broken a bone. Well, I broke my my left foot one day. It fell asleep and I was walking off, and then my ankle twisted and I broke it. And so because I couldn't drive anywhere, I had all this time on my hand to research and all that, and that's what I started doing. That's how I end up deciding that I was going to write this book about this art theft. And a week after my book launch, I broke my ankle, the other one. And then I couldn't go out. I was gaining this momentum from the media that I had pushed. And here I couldn't really use it. So once you get into the summer, as someone who is a writer who's promoting book, summers are really hard. People are on vacation and that. So fall is a good time into winter and all that. So I thought, well, I'll have to pick up again in the fall. And so as the summer went on, I found out who was behind the theft through this connection, and they matched up with the people I had researched in my book. I never used the real name, and I could confirm, I'm like, this guy is legit, and this is definitely the story. And then in a way, I was just like, I don't know if I really want to promote this book. I not to be chased down by a bunch of criminals, so I set that aside. And then out of the blue, I get a random message through Facebook from a lady who had been at my reading, who had gotten my book. She had to be down on Main Street that day, walk into Picasso's, and she ended up buying a book. She was looking at publishing a book. She grabbed my book that she bought and started looking into information and realizes that we live in the same neighborhood. And she was like, can we talk about book publishing? I'm like, oh yeah, sure. It turns out she lives 5 houses down from me. And I meet her, and then we end up having conversations about feng shui. She is a functional medicine person who also does shamanic journeying and that. And here I was talking about, oh, I've done feng shui for 25 years, blah, blah, blah. And so she started telling me about the chakra healing room. That's how I ended up there. That's how I found my tribe. And the funny thing was, I went online. I was like, I gotta go check this place out. And the first class was all signs and synchronicities. I was like, oh,
that was perfect.
I gotta go, because I had this huge thing to happen that was just like a slap in the face. So I go to that, and that's kind of where it started. I end up, as soon as I walked in the place, my gut said, you're at home. It was just the weirdest feeling, but
I had that same exact feeling when I walked in there.
I was like, I'm here. These are my people, because I talked about all these weird things that have happened to me that I just don't understand. And all these people were on their own journey trying to figure out what is going on.
Yeah.
As I started learning about, numbers, and I had learned numerology after, probably, I learned feng shui first, and probably about 7 years later, I started learning about numerology and that, and really more as a hobby for fun. Before I left my job, I had become Reiki attuned, really trying to manage my own stress, my own body.
Sure.
When I was there, I was just floored by all the synchronicities and when we were talking about numbers, because I thought, God, I remember, wow, the last few years at my job, I would see 11:11 on the clock, always 11:11, 111. I would go traveling, my hotel room number would be 111. I was just like, why do I keep seeing these numbers? Really not thinking they meant a whole lot. But now I know those are numbers. When you see repeat numbers, they are like signs from your spirit guides trying to tell you that, hey, pay attention.
Yeah.
Well, I was ignoring that. My world was mostly tied to logic and reason and research, and I would say evidence. All my decision making in my business was driven off of things that I thought were tangible, right? Very outer world. And just to show you how disconnected I came from that inner world, was I put those things aside. So when my gut was telling me to leave and my body was reacting, I was clueless. I had become clueless in my world because my world was just so sunk into that outward environment, and it was really trying to go back in. So when I went back and started going more of the chakra room, I really started thinking, yeah, you know what? I remember I loved this stuff. I loved working with energy. I just love trying to understand and figure out, how does this all work together? And that really, I think, reopened me back up. And they asked me if I wanted to do a numerology workshop, because I knew numerology, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'll teach a small workshop just for fun. And I started meditating again. I hadn't done that in years. But then I start getting information in dreams. I start getting messagings. I start getting information in dreams. And specifically, I got a specific chart, numerologic chart, that I don't know where this came from, but I knew I was between, it wasn't a dream. I had 2 dreams very specific on where the background was, like I was in a class and I could see this universal background, like outer space, let's just say. That was the backdrop. And I would see images or writing, and I would get information. Not that it was a spoken word, it was like information being put in my head, how this works. The first dream, I got a bunch of things. I'm like, I have no idea what these mean. The second dream, I got specific instructions, and then it all started coming together. So that's how I found my way on this journey, was really starting to listen within. So the last couple of years, I'd say I've come a long way from where I was. And I think that, you know, I can look back now with 2020 vision, right? I should have been listening to my body. I should have really been gone within and focused, taken that time to focus. I should have balanced all that information I was taking from my outside world with my inside world.
Yeah. And I love that you brought it up, and especially that way, because anytime someone says should, I'm like, my radar goes up. I'm like, what? Let's think about this. Let's dissect this. And I was just thinking when we started this conversation before, what is it that we want to focus on talking about? And it just unfolds through your story. And really, I feel like the message of our conversation today really is listen to the messages. Like, first of all, there's something about divine timing here that I'm getting that I feel like I need to bring up. And it's so interesting. The sign and synchronicity. I was just today talking with someone about how my perspective on relationship, I feel like it's not bad. I wouldn't do anything different. Shoulda, coulda, woulda. However, I really have this sense that there's a sense of completion when it's in God's timing or divine timing. And with signs and synchronicities, messages from our body. And then as you grow and you start to listen a little bit, those signs and synchronicities, you start noticing, you're like, that's a weird coincidence. If someone's listening and they're like, I kind of get those sometimes, start taking notes of them. You don't have to figure them out. You don't have to force the understanding. But if you do start tuning in, you do start getting the messages. And my belief is that, first of all, Spirit and God never give up on us. So they'll keep sending messages until we are receiving them from whatever it takes. Whatever it takes, it's going to happen. And also, could it be, there's a possibility, I'm curious if that's how long it took you to listen. And so Spirit knows that, and they knew the journey and all the time. And you look back now and it's so obvious, but the exact right things, even if you miss some, just like our GPS, when the GPS is plugged in and we make a wrong turn, it says U-turn, or you get a new route, it's still leading you to the same place. And I had to call that out, because if we will allow life to unfold and be open to it, we're not going to do perfect, but you mentioned listening within. I think that is a key. If you're curious about this, you're listening to this episode, you for sure are in this place where it's time to start listening within.
Well, what's so funny, Katie, is I'm almost embarrassed to say this, but so my education is in communications, right? So part of what I was trained in is how linguistics work, the English language. How do we work? How do we tell a story? But also trends, marketing trends, observe behaviors. How do we, even from the human side, consumer decision, my entire life was dissecting what was going on and understanding those behaviors and helping people with their pain points. And here, I could not see them for me. I felt like when I had that big synchronicity after I wrote my book, like my spirit guides were like, hey, McFly.
Right?
Over here. And part of the blinders that I had put on, that I still had on, I think were from just the way I was raised. These things shouldn't be, these things shouldn't happen. And I'm like, why not? Once I understood, once I figured out, oh my God, yeah, that side, this is for real. Yeah. I really started paying attention to signs and symbols.
Yeah.
And so when I was working on the numerology book, when I started getting things and I was working on the numerology book, this is before I got the completion of the Cosmic Soul Chart, I literally started writing a workbook. I didn't intend to, it just was going to be worksheets, and I thought I should probably put a book together for class. So I ended up writing this for people to use just numerology as an exercise to go within, right? To spend time thinking about what numbers mean and how it relates to them. I didn't really care whether even how they understood number to be correct under the Pythagorean numerology definition, right? My only goal was then to start get them in the habit of thinking about what things mean, right?
Yeah.
I remember there was this part I was considering, do I put angel numbers in here? I don't know if I should put angel numbers here. Right now, all I have are exercises. This might not fit in. And I'm like, I probably need a sign. And literally, my husband and I sat down, went to dinner. I put my phone down. It was 4:44. I was like,
yeah.
the bill, and our bill was, it was $44 is what it was, because my husband was like, he goes, I got a bill with text. He goes, I've never gotten a bill before where you didn't have change. It was completely $44 added up, put in the tax. And I was like, I think I am supposed to put this in.
Right.
And then I got the cosmic soul chart. I was in the middle of editing, getting ready with the final edit to publish this book. And I'm like, oh my God, you telling me I have to stop this book now and put this thing in? So I'm like, okay. So I put it in, and I couldn't finish it until I got everything right. And the funny thing was, I had wrote something that was incorrect. I calculated something that was incorrect in there. And I got stuck in this one section, and I couldn't get past it. And then I woke up to a voice that told me what I did wrong and how to fix it. And I went and checked, and I'm like, sure enough, what I did wrong, it was there, plain as day, and I fixed it. And then all of a sudden, like the rest of the information, I was able, what I call go with the flow, things start processing through. So I'm getting like very hard lessons into to tune in and let things go, and they will arrive when they're supposed to arrive.
That's exactly right. Yes.
Yeah.
I love it. I think numerology is so fascinating. You and I sat down and did the cosmic soul chart.
Yeah.
When you went through it with me, so it takes the name and gives this interpretation and all of the calculations, all of the stuff that you downloaded, that you got messages for, it essentially says the same thing as my numerology reading, same thing as my human design, same thing as some of these messages that I get is said in a different way. And so this is just one more example of a tool that can support you on your journey to learn about the inner self, inner knowing, like, how am I wired? How can I balance? That's a big theme in my life. And I just think it's just the coolest freaking thing ever that you could dream and get these messages and it be so aligned with science and the systems that I've studied as well. And it's just beautiful. Like, it shows how we're all so connected in a different way than we understand.
We're all part of this universe. We tend to think that, nature is things that grow outside, but really everything is connected, right?
Yeah.
And that's the basic philosophy of, I'll just go back to feng shui, is that everything's energy, everything's connected. And science tells us now that everything is energy. We're all working together. So where I might have laughed off at one time, something that tells me who I am based on a number, I don't really anymore, because it's very consistent. Even when I went back and looked at my Pythagorean numerology, when I look at that aspect and I look at all the tests I take, I'm like, which is a different way of telling me the same thing of who I am. And one of the reasons why I like the human design is because when I look at it, it was for me validation of how I was operating. I do think if I would have known it sooner, I would not have struggled as long as I did. But I didn't know that tool was available at the time, because that was not my world, right? But when I look at it now, I was like, now I know why, this makes sense, right? Now I know why I should sometimes not respond, hold back, and wait for me to think about it instead of responding in the moment. That is a big one for me to teach myself. My husband knows that now, so he tries to trick me and he'll say things to me, and he's like, "You're not supposed to." I'll respond. He's like, "You're not supposed to respond right now." It's like, okay.
I love that.
sink in.
Yes. And I feel like the theme today for us in this conversation has really just been the beauty of allowing your life to unfold and listening to self-trust even, and letting yourself figure things out as they unfold. This listen and trust.
Yeah, there's something very powerful and it's so subtle, but when you listen to yourself, you're really empowering yourself to take back control of your life.
Yeah.
So I feel like we are programmed from the time we're little. I mean, we are. Everything you know, everything you believe, all your perspectives of life, everything you think is based on the filters in which you operate. And those filters are developed from the time you're a kid and as you're raised, right? So when you end up developing a tunnel vision, and so you have to do things to make your brain look at your life from different perspectives, right? Whether it's through creativity, where it's through using profile charts that are different from other profiles, anything that breaks that habit of just marching along like a little soldier or being that hamster in the wheel. If you want to get off the wheel, right, you got to jump into something that is different to get your brain thinking differently. But the power you have within, you just don't realize you have that until you take those steps to experience it for yourself. That's the only way I can describe it, right?
Yeah.
I look at myself. Back then I thought, this is how my life is supposed to unfold, the American dream. I'm supposed to, work, have a career, retire, I don't know, golf the rest of my life, whatever. Like it's supposed to be this and this. It's not supposed to be that, and that, right? All the things that you do, whatever your experiences are in life, they definitely there are things that you can pull out of there that you can still use, especially the bad experiences, because the bad experiences are complete tools of what you needed to learn or what you learned or take away from that. And that's how we can also heal from things that we feel hurt in the past. We can also learn from those hurts as part of our journey. But I just feel like until we're willing to step out of that zone, and you don't have to go like crazy and quit your job like I did. I was fortunate to be in a position where I could walk away from my job, even though everything told me that was the craziest thing you will ever do, right? You're going to jump off a moving train. Okay, let's go. But it still was the right thing to do because I'm happy. I mean, for most, like if you were to die, and you think about it this way, if you were to die and you went into a life review and you were looking back, how many moments of your life were you happy, that made you happy? Because it's going to be the smaller things, right? I think back when I grew up and we didn't have much money growing up, but we had fun. I mean, there was joyous occasion, not that there was things that in our childhood, all of us could probably bring to the table that we didn't like. When you think about the things that are fun, they're small things, they're the engaged things. It's really when you're living in the moment and live in the moment, you've got to really pay attention to your energy and what's going on.
Always bringing it back to the moment. I love that. Thank you. I want to add one more thing just to piggyback off of how you're describing this. And I have to just trust this is a sign and synchronicity that I'm thinking about,
Yeah.
But you had mentioned we all grow up with these filters and we all like have these supposed tos that we're raised with. And I just want to point out, like, those aren't bad. Those are not bad. They, like Richard Rohr talks about how, and he talks in the context of having a faith base. Like you said, you were raised Catholic and I was raised Christian as well. And it's like, those filters, the way we were raised and our parents doing their very best, just assuming that the religious leaders were doing their very best to help you live a good moral life, learn things and have a structure. Basically, they're giving you this container. And yes, it is like a box, quote unquote. It's a container that's full with, ends up being some rules, or it ends up being some structure. It ends up being some things that could go wrong pretty quickly. But at the end of the day, when you have a container to start from, right, it's not bad, but if once you take the lid off that container and you find out that you're a person that is built for play, creativity, allowing life and to flow. Sometimes a little stuff comes out of the container, and that is where that beauty comes in, and you get to become your own person. But if you didn't have that container, again, it's not a bad container. There's going to be hard and easy things no matter what. If we can be grateful for the container because it gave us our starting place, and this is the context we have to grow from, to move from, just like being raised with certain morals and then you're left out on your own to do it. It did give you something to start from. And that is a good thing. So we aren't trying to bash traditionalism or religion or any corporate at all. And I know you weren't. I'm just pulling out that we're not saying there's something bad. However, if there is something inside of you that's like a little spark, maybe, Carol's story has sparked something and you're like, oh, I relate to that, or, oh, I want to try something new. Could you be curious and playful enough with yourself, just like you would letting a kid go out to play after school to get a little bit of energy out? Could you be curious enough to follow that spark and just allow yourself to see why you're curious about it, why you're interested? Because it could lead you to a life that brings you more joy, or it could lead you to the person that's going to support your wildest dreams that you didn't even know you had yet. And there is a little bit of magic to letting things unfold.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Letting go of the fear, right? I mean, to stop ourselves from doing what we feel like we want to do, we have to ask ourselves, so why am I afraid of this? And then sometimes you just have to dig into that. And once you understand it, it's so much easier to let go. A lot of fears are unbased, right? What are people going to think about me? That's a big one, right? You realize people don't sit around thinking about you all the time. They could care less.
Yeah.
Time, right?
They're thinking about themselves.
You're thinking about yourself, thinking because maybe you were raised where that mattered, right? But you still carry that with you, right? I feel like life, we come here with a plan. We come here to learn lessons and experiences, and how our journey unfolds and what we learn are the things you're supposed to learn, that eventually you're going to be on track to where you need to go. But our choices in life also take us wherever that path is. And maybe we do go off path, but essentially there's ways we get back to whatever our path is. I don't think there's anything bad about our past, because everything in our path is a lesson, right?
So what got us right here today.
That's right. They say winners become winners because they learned from failing.
Yeah.
What's the saying about Edison?
I never fail, I only learn.
Yeah, you just learned 1,000 ways not to get there or whatever.
That's right.
It's something along that line.
Well, Carol, there's so much more I'd love to have you share, but I think the message of what needed to come out today is here. I'd love to have you just consider, is there anything left unsaid? Like, oh, I was hoping to get to say this, even if it's a random thought. I would love for you to just take a minute, see if there's anything left unsaid that you'd like to say related to our conversation or not. And then how would people get in touch with you if they wanted to do a reading with you? I'll have the information in our show notes for sure, how to get in touch. And I definitely recommend sitting down with you and getting that cosmic soul chart. But what else would you like to share before we go?
Well, let's see. I would only say that when you decide to chase after that spark, there's still ups and downs, right? You will question oh my gosh, why did I do this? There's always that. I just want to let you know that is, I would say, your ego or whatever it is pulling you back to your comfort zone, right? So just know that it'll pass. It shall too pass once you start to figure it out. And I don't believe I've completed my journey by any means. I'm still learning every day, but I'm learning to enjoy the journey, along the way, right? I feel like that most of my life, and I think it's very common for everybody, most of our lives, we are always thinking about the past or thinking about the future, but just being in the moment is extremely important.
Yeah, agreed.
Now, if anybody wants, I do have books on Amazon. I have my crime book on Barnes & Nobles and Amazon, but someone can walk through them. They also carry them up at the chakra healing room. If someone wants a cosmic soul chart reading, they can just email me the request. And I also do traditional feng shui analysis. Those take not take a long time to do, but there's a lot more interaction required in those. I do those as well. They can email me at the same address. And I think there's something to be learned about human design. I wish I would have known it when I was working. I think it provides a layer that doesn't exist within a lot of the traditional analysis, which are really more based on your personality and your skill set. And that I just feel like this incorporates how you work, how you respond. We're all energetic beings, and why wouldn't we want to learn how that operates?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for that. And I appreciate you being here for this conversation. Thank you.
Well, thanks for having me. I enjoyed speaking with you, and hopefully
Hey, it's 1:11 when we're finishing this up, by the way.
That's awesome.
I will mention, as we say goodbye today, we're moving into all the sales season. It's coming Black Friday. And one of the things that I've been prompted to put together for the end of the year into the beginning of next year is to put an offering together that's an experiment of curiosity working with your human design. So if you are someone who is feeling burnt out, overwhelmed by the holidays, someone who just like the idea of setting New Year's resolutions, you're like, I don't even know like where 2025 went. I think we need a container of time to just explore who we are and experiment in a really low stakes way, how to maintain energy, enthusiasm, decision-making without all of the extra. And so I'm going to be offering with my Black Friday sale here, a 6-week experiment with human design where you get coaching with me and you can just try it on like you would a dress in a fitting room and see if human design can support you as you move into this new year. And finally, if you have any questions for myself or for Carol, you can fill out the Google form that's in the show notes, and I will make sure that we get your questions answered on a future episode. I think that's all for this week. Thank you for listening to the end, and big thanks again to Carol for being with us today. All right, go be curious and allow life to unfold. Until next time, bye.
Thanks for tuning in to Inspired by Design with Katie Rupert. If today's episode sparked something in you, I'd love to hear about it. Share your takeaways, subscribe, or even leave a review to help others find the show. For more tools and insights, visit my free Facebook group. And until next time, keep embracing exactly who you are and move forward one inspired action at a time.